I never believed in fate, not really. I always thought that life was a series of choices, good and bad, but ultimately, we were the architects of our own destinies. That belief, however, shattered the day I received the message. It was a Wednesday morning, nothing out of the ordinary. I woke up, had my coffee, checked my emails, and scrolled through a couple of social media posts like I usually did. My life had been following its usual, predictable rhythm for years. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary to disrupt it. I didn't expect to read a text that would alter my life in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. The text came from an unknown number. "I need to tell you something about your wife." At first, I thought it was a prank. My mind immediately tried to dismiss it. Who would text me something like that? But something about the message stuck with me. I don't know if it was the cryptic nature of it or the strange urgency it carried, but I felt this gnawing feeling in my stomach, a sense that something was wrong. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The last thing I wanted was to get caught up in some random drama. But the feeling didn't leave me. It lingered throughout the day, making everything feel off-kilter. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't stop thinking about that message. It was like a small seed of doubt had been planted in my mind, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it kept growing. When I got home that evening, I found the message still in my phone. I could have deleted it. I could have just pretended it never happened. But instead, I stared at it for a long time, contemplating whether or not I should respond. Finally, I did. I typed back, simply, "What about her?" The reply came almost immediately. "She's been seeing someone else. I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's serious. You need to know." My heart dropped. I froze. 1,000 thoughts hit me all at once. Was this real? Who was this person? Why me? What was I supposed to do with this information? I called the number. It rang a few times before someone picked up. It was a man's voice, unfamiliar, calm, but laced with a hint of tension. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice betraying my shock. "This is someone who knows what's been happening with your wife," he said, his tone matter of fact, like he'd done this before. "I don't want to get involved, but you deserve to know. You deserve the truth." I felt a pit in my stomach. I had been married to Sara for almost 7 years. We had our ups and downs, but we had always worked through things, or so I thought. We had a good life, a simple life. Or so I convinced myself. "What do you mean by serious?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean she's in love with someone else. It's been going on for months. She's been lying to you about her whereabouts, about her time at work. She's seeing him more often than she's letting you know. It's not just physical, it's emotional too." My mind was reeling. This couldn't be happening. Sara was everything to me. She was the person I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. How could she do this? Why would she do this? I asked the man how he knew all of this, but he just sighed. "I don't want to get into the details. I'm just telling you because it's not fair to you to be kept in the dark." Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. I sat there in complete silence, staring at the phone in my hand. It felt like time had stopped. Everything around me felt distant, blurry, as if I was watching my own life unfold from the outside. My mind raced. What do I do now? Do I confront her? Do I act like nothing's wrong? Or do I dig deeper and uncover the truth? I couldn't shake the overwhelming feeling of betrayal. It felt like a gut punch, but worse, it felt like it was slowly sinking in, piece by piece. I decided to wait until the next evening to confront her. I wanted to give myself some time to process everything. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I really knew about her. How many layers had I missed? How many things had I turned a blind eye to? That evening, I came home early from work, determined to get some answers. She wasn't home yet. I sat on the couch, my mind racing, trying to gather my thoughts. I wasn't the confrontational type. I wasn't the kind of person who made scenes or raised his voice. But tonight, I couldn't afford to stay calm. Not anymore. When she walked in, looking as beautiful as ever, I barely recognized her. The smile on her face didn't reach her eyes. It was the smile of someone who knew something you didn't. I stood up, my hands trembling. "Sara, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard. "What's going on? Who's Jason?" I asked, cutting right to the heart of it. "And why didn't you tell me about him?" Her face froze. For a split second, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she put down her bag and sighed. "Marcus, Is it true? Have you been seeing him?" I asked, cutting her off. She looked at me for a long time before speaking again. I didn't want you to find out like this, she whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. But yes, it's true. I've been seeing him for months. The words hit me harder than I could have ever expected. But they were just the beginning of a revelation that would leave me questioning everything about the woman I thought I knew. What happened next would change the course of my life forever. She stood there, not meeting my eyes. Her hands fidgeted nervously, her lips pressed tight, like she was struggling to form the words. I waited. Every second felt like a lifetime. Every passing moment another drop in the ocean of confusion and betrayal that was slowly drowning me. I didn't want this, she finally said, her voice soft, almost breaking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The way she said it, the way she looked at the floor instead of at me, made me feel like I was losing control of everything. Sara, the woman I had built my life with, was telling me she had been seeing someone else. Jason. I forced myself to ask, how long? A few months, she said, her words a whisper. But it's been going on for longer than you think. It wasn't about just him. It's everything. It's us. She paused, taking a deep breath, like she was summoning every ounce of courage to continue. I haven't been happy for a long time, and I didn't know how to tell you. I felt like the world had just dropped out from under me. This wasn't just about Jason. This was about something deeper. There had been cracks in our marriage that I never noticed, things she'd hidden from me, maybe even from herself. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, loyal, supportive, always there. And yet, she had felt this way for so long and hadn't said a word. Why Jason? I asked, my voice tight, fighting the lump in my throat. Why him? What's so different about him? She hesitated before answering. I don't know. I didn't plan it. It just happened. He made me feel seen. He made me feel wanted in ways I didn't realize I was missing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I really am. I never wanted to hurt you. Every word she spoke felt like a dagger, but I couldn't stop myself from asking more questions. When did it start? Was it when you started staying late at work? When did you stop caring about us? Sara's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't speak right away. She wiped her eyes, trying to steady her breath, but it was clear that she was struggling just as much as I was. The distance between us felt impossible to bridge in that moment. Maybe it started even before then, she admitted. Maybe I was unhappy long before I even met him. But I didn't know how to face it, Marcus. I didn't know how to admit that I had changed. I've been lying to myself for months, pretending that everything was okay. I sat down, trying to process the weight of everything she had just said. It was too much to take in all at once. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had been living a lie. How had I been so blind? You said it's not just about him. What does that mean, Sara? I asked, my voice shaky but determined. She looked at me, her face a mixture of guilt and sadness. It's about us, Marcus. We've drifted apart. I didn't know how to tell you that. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was already hurting. And now, I've hurt you in a way I never imagined. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Anger? Sadness? Betrayal? Maybe all of it. But deep down, a part of me couldn't help but wonder. Was this something that could be fixed? Could we find our way back to each other? Or was this the beginning of the end? Before I could say anything else, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not asking for you to forgive me right now. I just need you to understand why I did what I did. I can't take it back, but I want you to know the truth. That's all I can offer. The truth. Was that all I needed to hear? Or was the truth simply the beginning of a much deeper pain? As the silence stretched between us, I found myself asking questions I hadn't expected. Was this the end of our marriage? Was there any hope for us to rebuild what had been shattered? And most importantly, could I ever look at her the same way again? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was. This conversation wasn't over. It was only the beginning. I sat there for what felt like hours, but it could have been just a few minutes. The weight of everything she had just told me hung in the air, suffocating the space between us. I couldn't look at her. Every time I did, my chest tightened. My mind couldn't stop replaying the moments, the things I thought I knew about our marriage, about her, that now seemed like distant illusions. I don't know what to say. I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. My mind felt like it was spiraling. I had so many questions, so many things I needed to ask, but I was frozen. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why drag it out? Was it worth it? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her eyes searched the room as if trying to find the right words, the right explanation. But how could there be a right explanation for what she had done? How could I even begin to understand? I don't know, she admitted. I don't know why I didn't tell you. Maybe I was scared of losing you. Maybe I didn't want to face the consequences of my own actions. But the longer I kept it from you, the more I felt trapped in my own lie. I didn't know how to get out of it. Trapped. It felt like she was describing more than just our marriage. She had been trapped in her own choices, her own guilt, and I had been trapped in the dark, completely unaware. The realization made my blood boil. How could she have let it get to this point? How could she have looked me in the eyes every day and lied to me? I stood up abruptly, needing to move, needing to do something. My legs felt shaky beneath me. I was angry, but I was also heartbroken. I had trusted her with everything, with my life, with my future. And now, all of that felt like it had been ripped away in a matter of moments. Is he still in the picture? I asked, my voice low but laced with anger. I needed to know. I needed to hear it from her. She hesitated for a moment, and that hesitation spoke volumes. It was as if she was trying to protect me, or perhaps protect herself from the reality of what was happening. But then she nodded, her eyes avoiding mine. Yes, he is. I don't know what to say, Marcus. I'm sorry. Sorry. It felt like such an empty word in that moment. Sorry didn't erase the months of betrayal. Sorry didn't undo the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. I turned away from her, unable to stand the sight of her anymore, unable to process what was happening. But then, something inside me shifted. A part of me, the part that had been holding on to hope, to the belief that we could fix this, broke. I had always been the one to try to fix things, to keep things together, but this felt beyond repair. She had made her choice, and no amount of apologies could change that. I don't know what to do with this information, I said, my voice cracking. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the sound of her breathing, her attempts to hold back the tears, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not anymore. Not after everything she had done. I understand, she said softly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. There it was. The truth had been said, but it didn't bring me the closure I thought it would. Instead, it left me feeling hollow, empty. What now? What was the next step? Did I confront the man she had been seeing? Did I try to salvage something? Or was I simply holding onto a sinking ship? I walked to the window, staring out at the world outside, trying to ground myself, trying to remind myself that there was more to life than this moment. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed, that our entire life together, everything we had built, was now nothing more than a pile of broken pieces. You said you were trapped, I said, turning back to face her. But now, I feel trapped. Trapped in this mess, in these lies. She nodded, her face pale, her expression unreadable. I never wanted you to feel that way. I never wanted to hurt you. But I did. And now, it's up to you to decide what you want to do with this. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. But one thing was clear. Something had shifted inside me. Something irreversible. And then, out of nowhere, as if the universe was adding salt to the wound, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I think it's time for you to meet Jason. The text was simple, but the implication was clear. Whoever this was, they were pushing me into a corner. Whoever this was, they wanted me to confront the man who had taken my wife. The man who had torn my life apart. I stood there, staring at the screen, my heart racing. What was I supposed to do now? What was the right choice? The phone buzzed again, and this time, I opened the message. He's waiting for you. Come find him. I didn't know if I was ready for what would come next. But I knew one thing. Everything was about to change. I stared at the message for what felt like forever. My hands were shaking as I held the phone, reading those words over and over again. He's waiting for you. Come find him. My stomach turned, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. What the hell was happening? Was this some sick game? Or was this someone genuinely trying to provoke me, to push me further into this mess? Sara was still sitting there on the couch, her eyes fixed on the floor, avoiding my gaze. She hadn't said anything since the last time I spoke. She was probably waiting for me to do something, anything, but what was I supposed to do? I turned toward her, still holding my phone in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. I just got a message. From someone. They said they want me to meet him. Her face drained of color, and she looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. Who? She asked, her voice barely audible. I don't know, but it's someone who knows everything. Someone who wants me to find Jason. Her eyes flickered with panic. Marcus, please don't. But I wasn't listening. I couldn't. The sense of rage bubbling inside me was too much to ignore. The man she had betrayed me with, Jason, was out there somewhere. I didn't know who he was, what he was like, but I couldn't just let this go. I had to confront him. I had to see for myself the man who had taken my wife, the man who had stolen everything I thought I knew about my life. I walked toward the door, but before I could leave, Sara stood up. Marcus, wait, she pleaded, reaching for my arm. Please, don't go. It's not what you think. I pulled away, my chest tight with anger. What do you mean, it's not what I think? What's left for me to think, Sara? You've already told me everything I need to know. You've been lying to me for months. She seemed to crumble at my words, her face twisted in regret. I didn't want this. I didn't want it to go this far. Please, just think about what you're doing. You don't need to meet him. It'll only make things worse. But it was too late. The message had set something in motion inside me. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me. About taking back whatever little power I still had left. If Jason was waiting for me, if he was the one behind this whole thing, I had to face him. I don't know what's going to happen after this, Sara, but I'm going to meet him, I said, my voice cold and firm. I stepped out of the door, leaving her behind without another word. As I walked down the street, my mind was racing. What the hell was I even going to say to this guy? What kind of confrontation was I walking into? Was he some smooth-talking bastard who had carefully wormed his way into Sara's life? Or was he something else entirely? I didn't know, and that terrified me. The message had given no clues about where to meet him, no specifics. It was just a vague suggestion, come find him. I could feel the tension building in my chest as I walked, unsure of where I was headed, but feeling an overwhelming pull that guided me, step by step, down a path I had never anticipated. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You're close. That was it. I had no idea how he knew where I was, but the fact that he did made my pulse quicken. I was being led, manipulated, and I hated every second of it. But at the same time, I couldn't stop. I had to see this through. The city streets seemed empty, despite the usual hustle and bustle. I rounded a corner and found myself at an old, run-down building. The kind of place that felt abandoned, like nobody had bothered with it for years. The message was clear. This was where I was supposed to be. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, hesitant. But then the door creaked open. And there he was. Jason, the man who had ruined everything. He didn't look like I expected. There were no dramatic gestures or villainous grins. He was just a guy, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair, a stubbled jaw, and a look in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. He wasn't the picture of a classic bad guy. But in that moment, it didn't matter. He had my wife. He had crossed a line that I couldn't ignore. I've been waiting for you, he said, his voice calm, but with a certain edge to it. You're here, so I guess you're ready to talk. I took a step forward, every part of me screaming to lash out, to punch him in the face. But I held myself back. No, I needed to hear him out. I needed to know why. Why Sara? Why the lies? Why everything? What do you want? I asked, my voice low and controlled. What do you think you're going to get out of this? Jason raised an eyebrow. What do I want? I don't know if you'll like the answer, but I'll tell you anyway. He paused, a strange smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I want the same thing you wanted, Marcus. I want what's mine. And I want you to understand that it was never about hurting you. It was about finding something real. I wanted to strangle him, but I forced myself to listen. What the hell are you talking about? I spat. This is about my wife. This is about everything you've stolen from me. Jason chuckled softly, his eyes narrowing. You don't get it, do you? This was never about stealing her. It was about what you failed to see. She's not yours to keep, Marcus. She's not something to possess. His words hit me harder than I could have imagined. This was the man who had been seeing my wife, the man who had destroyed my trust, yet he was standing here acting like he had all the answers. You're wrong, I said, stepping closer to him. You're just a coward hiding behind a lie. But Jason didn't flinch. Instead, he just smiled again. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just the guy who was brave enough to see what you were too blind to. I could feel the tension in the air between us, thick and suffocating. Jason's smile didn't waver, and every word he spoke cut deeper than the last. "You don't get it, do you?" he repeated, his voice almost too calm for the storm of emotions running through me. "You've been living in a fantasy. She never really belonged to you." His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. I wanted to yell at him, to do anything that would make this nightmare stop. But something held me back. Maybe it was his confidence, or maybe it was that nagging feeling deep down that I didn't have all the answers yet. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Jason, but this ends now," I said, trying to mask the shakiness in my voice. "You've taken enough. You've ruined everything. And for what? For her?" Jason tilted his head, studying me with a look that sent a chill down my spine. "It's not about her, Marcus. It's about understanding the truth. She wasn't yours to lose. You can't hold on to people like their possessions. Love isn't something you can just own." I felt a surge of anger rise in me. The nerve of this guy. He had the audacity to lecture me, to justify what he had done with those words. I wanted to punch him, to show him that I wasn't just some guy he could talk down to. But I held back. I knew I had to control this, at least for now. "You've crossed a line, Jason," I said, trying to steady my breath. "I don't care what your excuses are. You've done something unforgivable." He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness, Marcus. I'm not asking for you to understand. I'm just telling you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not." A heavy silence settled between us. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my body tense and on edge. Everything inside me screamed to do something, anything, to end this madness. But a small part of me, the part that was still clinging to the hope of some kind of closure, told me to keep listening. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking the silence. "Why her? Why Sara?" Jason took a deep breath, his eyes softening for just a moment. "It's not about her, Marcus. It's about me. About what I've always been missing. She was the answer to a question I've been asking for years. I never meant to hurt you, but I didn't know how to tell you that." He looked away, like he was thinking, maybe even regretting some part of what he'd done. But then, just as quickly, his expression hardened again. "But now it's done, and you can't change that." I stood there, frozen. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that he wasn't just some opportunistic jerk. But deep down, I knew better. He didn't care about me, or about the wreckage he'd left in his wake. He cared about getting what he wanted, and that was it. "You're nothing but a coward," I said, finally finding my voice again. "You think you can just take whatever you want and walk away without consequences? Well, you're wrong." Jason smirked, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "You think I haven't thought about that? You think I don't know what I've done?" His voice dropped low, almost as if he were speaking to himself now. "I've ruined things, sure. But in the end, it was worth it." I couldn't understand it. I couldn't grasp how anyone could justify tearing apart someone else's life, all for their own selfish desires. How had Sara gotten involved with someone like this? How had she fallen for him? But instead of answering my questions, Jason just shrugged, the indifference in his expression cutting deeper than any insult. "You're not going to get the answers you want, Marcus. Not from me, and not from her. I'm not here to give you closure. I'm here to make you face the truth. And the truth is, Sara and I, we're done hiding. She made her choice. Now, you have to make yours." His words hung in the air, heavier than I could bear. I wanted to lash out, to scream at him, but I stayed silent. The anger that had been boiling inside me for hours was beginning to shift. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. This was the moment where everything changed. The point of no return. "I don't know what kind of person you are, Jason," I said quietly, my voice hoarse. "But I'm done with this. I'm done with you, and I'm done with all of this." Jason didn't reply. He just turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the building as if nothing had happened. And in that moment, I realized something. I was standing there, in the cold, broken and lost. But it wasn't Jason or Sara who had truly shattered me. It was the truth that I was the one left picking up the pieces of a life that was no longer mine. As I walked back to my car, the weight of everything hit me like a freight train. Nothing was the same. Not the world around me, and certainly not the woman I had once called my wife. And then, as if it couldn't get worse, my phone buzzed again. It was Sara. "I need to see you. Please. We need to talk." I stopped in my tracks. What now? What more could she possibly say? I stood frozen, staring at my phone, The message from Sara flashing on the screen. I need to see you. Please. We need to talk. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. No, it was the weight of everything crashing down on me at once. I didn't know what she could possibly say that would change anything. After everything, after Jason, after all the lies, what was left to say? I felt my body tense, every muscle screaming to walk away, to leave it all behind. But I couldn't. I had to face her. Part of me still wanted answers, even though I knew it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't heal what had been broken. Still, the part of me that had once loved her deeply couldn't just let go without a final confrontation. I drove back to the apartment, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The anger that had been building up over the last few days had finally reached its peak. I could barely process anything beyond the way Jason had looked at me, his words cutting deeper than I'd ever imagined. But now, Sara wanted to talk. Wanted to explain? I parked outside the building, the same place I'd once called home, and for a brief second, I wondered if it still felt like home to her. Could it? Or had everything been replaced by the chaos of her affair? As I walked up the stairs to our door, I felt a knot in my stomach. The door was slightly ajar, and I hesitated before stepping inside. My breath caught when I saw her. Sara was sitting on the couch, her face pale, eyes red and swollen. She'd been crying, and the sight of her like that only made my anger flare even more. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, staring at her, waiting for her to speak. I didn't know how to tell you, she said softly, her voice trembling. I didn't want it to go this far. But now I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if it can be fixed. I felt my chest tighten. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. The woman I had shared my life with, my hopes and dreams, was sitting in front of me, broken and apologetic. But I knew I could never unsee what I had seen. Fix it, I repeated, my voice shaking with emotion. How do you fix something that's been broken beyond repair? How do you fix the trust you shattered? Sara's eyes filled with tears, and she reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Please, she begged, her voice desperate. I never meant to hurt you. I was confused, and I made the worst mistake of my life. But I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel the anger, the pain, the desire to walk away forever. But there was something inside me, something deeper, that wanted to understand. Wanted to believe in the woman I had married. But I knew better. Why Jason? I asked again, the question burning in my throat. Why him? She took a deep breath, her shoulders sagging. I don't have an excuse, Marcus. There's no reason that justifies what I did. I was lost. I thought I could find something I didn't have with you, but it was a lie. Jason was a distraction, but he wasn't the answer. I see that now. I've ruined everything. Her words, though filled with regret, felt hollow. I could tell she was sorry, but the damage had been done. The man she had chosen had taken something I could never get back. The image of her with him, the idea of them together, haunted me. Do you love him? I asked, each word feeling like a weight I had to drag out. Sara hesitated, and that moment of silence spoke volumes. I don't know what love is anymore, she whispered, breaking down. I thought I did, but I was wrong. I thought I was escaping something that was never really there. I was looking for something outside of myself, when the truth was, I've always had it with you. I just didn't see it. Her words were heartbreaking, but I wasn't sure if I believed them. She had been searching for something, anything, and in the end, it was Jason who filled that void. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. Do you want us to try again? I asked, the question leaving my lips before I could stop myself. Sara looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow. I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I want to try. If there's any part of you that's willing to let me in again, I'll do anything to make it right. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in around me. I was drowning in my own confusion, my own hurt. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could somehow get back to what we once had. But I wasn't sure if that was possible anymore. I stood there for a long time, staring at her, trying to find the right words. But nothing seemed to fit. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, if I could ever look at her the same way again. In the end, all I could manage was a quiet, I don't know. And with that, I turned and walked out the door. As I left, I realized that sometimes the hardest choice isn't the one you want to make, but the one you have to. I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of the past. I had to make a decision. and that decision would shape the rest of my life. The drive back home was almost unbearable. My mind was a battlefield, torn between the memories of everything Sara and I had shared and the undeniable reality of what had happened. Each mile felt like a step further from something I once believed was worth fighting for. But now, after all the lies, the betrayal, I wasn't sure if there was anything left to salvage. I hadn't expected the silence. The kind of silence that sits heavily in your chest, making each breath feel like it takes more effort. Sara's words kept echoing in my mind. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I love you. She had said all the things I wanted to hear, but somehow, they didn't sound real anymore. They sounded rehearsed, as if she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. When I arrived at the apartment, I stood outside for a while, staring at the door, wondering if I should walk back in. But I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't sure if I could ever walk back through that door the same way. Every inch of me wanted to believe that maybe things could go back to the way they were, but I knew better. The foundation we built had been cracked, and now, all I could feel was the weight of it. Finally, I stepped inside. Sara was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. She looked up when I entered, but there was no relief in her eyes. No hope, just a painful acceptance of what had already been said. I don't know what to do anymore, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. I don't know what's left for us. Sara didn't reply immediately. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and desperation. The silence between us stretched, unbearable and thick. I could see the struggle in her face. She wanted to say something, but what could she say that would make any difference now? I wish I could fix this, she whispered, finally breaking the silence. But I don't know how. I don't know if I can make it right. I don't even know if you'll ever be able to look at me the same way again. Her words felt like a punch in the gut, but they were true. How could I look at her the same? How could I ever erase the image of her with him, of everything she had hidden from me? It wasn't just the affair, it was the way she had let me live in the dark, thinking everything was fine when it wasn't. I can't just forget this, Sara, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You can't just expect me to pretend like everything is okay after what you've done. She nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. But I'm asking you to think about what we had, to think about whether or not there's anything worth saving. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that there was nothing left to save. But I didn't. I was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, physically. Every part of me wanted to walk away, to leave and never look back. But another part of me still wanted answers. Wanted to know if there was a chance we could fix this. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said quietly. I don't know if I can live with what you've done. But I need time. Time to figure out if there's anything left to salvage. Sara didn't say anything. She just sat there, her eyes filled with regret, as though she knew this might be the last time we would ever talk like this. I left without saying another word, and as I closed the door behind me, I realized something. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me. I had to find out who I was without her, without the life we had built together. And maybe, just maybe, that meant walking away from the life I thought I knew. But I couldn't make that decision yet. Not now. Not until I truly understood what I needed to move on. The days that followed felt like an endless fog, each one blending into the next. I stayed away from the apartment, taking time for myself to think. I didn't know where the road was leading me, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the limbo I had been stuck in. The weight of Sara's betrayal was heavy, but it wasn't the only thing that defined me anymore. I had to find a way to move forward, with or without her. I began focusing on things I had neglected, the hobbies I once loved, the friendships I had pushed aside, and, most importantly, myself. For the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't need to wait for closure from her or from anyone else. I needed to close the door on the past myself and step into a future that was still unwritten. Sara reached out a few times. I didn't respond immediately, unsure of how to approach her or if I was ready to face the consequences of our broken relationship. But eventually, I agreed to meet. Not to fix everything, but just to talk. To understand, not just about her mistakes, but about my own growth in the process. When we met, it wasn't the tense confrontation I had imagined. There was no anger in her eyes, no desperation. Just two people who had been through something incredibly painful and were now trying to find a way to make sense of it. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said quietly, looking down at her hands. And I know I don't deserve it, but I want to ask if there's any possibility for us. If you can ever forgive me. I took a deep breath. Forgiveness wasn't something I had been able to grasp in the beginning. But now, in this quiet moment, it wasn't about just forgiving her. It was about forgiving myself for allowing myself to stay in the shadows of what had been, and instead, looking ahead to what could be. I don't know if I can forget, I said softly, but I'm learning to forgive. Not just you, but myself too. I've spent too long focusing on the hurt, but I've realized that life has more to offer than pain. Sara nodded, a small tear slipping down her cheek, but there was something different about her now. It wasn't the desperation I had seen before, but a sense of humility and acceptance. I'm so sorry for everything, she whispered. But I want to do better. I want to be better. For both of us, if you'll let me. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know if we could rebuild what had been broken, but I knew I had grown through the pain. I wasn't the same person I had been before everything fell apart, and that was a good thing. We didn't make any promises that day. We just agreed to take things one step at a time. Slowly, cautiously, we started talking again. Really talking. About what had gone wrong. About our individual needs. About the ways we could heal, both separately and together. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. Months passed, and as the seasons changed, so did we. The scars didn't disappear, but they softened. We learned how to be honest, how to communicate, and how to move forward with respect for each other's journeys. And as time went on, something incredible happened. The broken pieces of our past began to form a new picture, one that was different, but stronger. We didn't pretend to be perfect. We didn't erase the mistakes, but we learned how to live with them, to live beyond them. We had rebuilt, piece by piece. Not a perfect life, but a real one. A life where we had learned to cherish each other again. Not because we were flawless, but because we were willing to try, to grow, and to forgive. And in that, I found peace. Not just with Sara, but with myself. I had walked through the darkness, and now, for the first time in a long time, I could see the light again.